Good afternoon. Firstly, let me introduce myself. My name is Febrianti Menda. I'm from English Education Department. In this lovely afternoon, I would like to thanks for the opportunity that has been given to me to present my seminar with the title Study on Vocabulary Teaching Technique. Okay, now we go to the chapter 1, Introduction. In this chapter, the writer presents background, research problem, research objective, research method, and key terms definition. Background: language is a meaningful way for communication. It means that a language is sound, which is produced, connected between the kind of sounds the speaker of a language make and their culture. English as foreign language is taught in Indonesia from elementary school until university level. English subject can be taught in an elementary school if it is needed by society and supported by a teacher who has ability to teach, so that at the end of elementary school, the student has a capacity of reading, writing, listening, and speaking in English. And to support for skill language, it is needed a language component that is named vocabulary. So, in my research, this study mainly concerned with the techniques of teaching English vocabulary and moreover, the role of the teacher. Competence of mastering the various techniques is very important to make the students to be able to do or achieve the aim of the instructional program on mastering vocabulary. Based on the background above, the research problems are: first, what kinds of techniques are used by the teacher in teaching English vocabulary? Second, how are student attitude toward the techniques applied by the teacher? And from the research problem, the research objective of this study are: first, to describe what kinds of techniques are used by the teacher in teaching English vocabulary. Second, to describe how are the students' attitude toward the techniques applied by the teacher. And next, research method. In this research, the researcher has two purposes. First, the researcher wants to investigate the kind of techniques in teaching vocabulary. Second, the researcher wants to investigate the student attitude toward the techniques applied by the teacher. Based in these reasons, the researcher used descriptive qualitative method. And according to Ari, in 1972, page 13, descriptive method is conducted to describe situation and what exists in the time of study in order get information. The researcher used two kinds of instruments to collect the data. They are observation and interview. According to Ellison, in 2013, page 42, state that observation is a recording event or circumstance in which the writer is present. The researcher surveys some interaction which are done by the teacher and the students during the teaching and learning process. The researcher collected the data on the teacher's technique in teaching English vocabulary by using note and record. According to Johnson in Noonan, 1992, page 194, he stated that interview has been used by second language acquisition researchers seeking data on stage and processes of acquisition. To get some information that related to research conducting, the researcher used interview. The researcher used notebook and recorder as the tool to collect the data in this case. Next, key terms definition. First is teaching. According to Brown in 2006, page 7, teaching is showing or helping someone to learn to do something, giving instruction, guiding in the study of something, providing with knowledge, and causing to know or understand. Second, teaching vocabulary techniques. The techniques of teaching vocabulary is a procedure or a collection way used in the classroom teaching vocabulary by Prasasti, 2004, page 15. And the third, qualitative research. According to Mulung in 1989, page 3, he said that qualitative research, which yield the descriptive data in the form of written or oral word from observing people or behavior. Next, this is chapter 2, literature review. In this chapter reviews previous study, some pertinent ideas, and theoretical framework of vocabulary teaching techniques. Okay, first, previous study. The previous research the researcher got firstly is the article from Ramadhani in 2015. In her thesis, Techniques in Teaching Vocabulary to Young Learners at LIA English course, she found major point. It is common techniques in teaching vocabulary to young learners can be divided into 3 groups. They are for presenting new words, using flashcards, and miming are preferred by most of teachers in this study. The second from Oligira in 2015. In her research study on problems of vocabulary teaching techniques, English teacher use in Holeta primary schools, grade 7 in focus. She get that teaching vocabulary skills should be given the attention it deserves in English classes. The third from Aisha in 2016. In her research, the vocabulary teaching and vocabulary learning, perception, strategies, and influences on students' vocabulary mastery. She get that vocabulary teaching and vocabulary learning was perceived influential to improve students' effective and followed by behavior. The fourth from Suprapto in 2017. In his research, the effectiveness of picture crossword puzzle game in teaching vocabulary, and he get it is important for the teachers to know the general characteristic of the students in a class. The fifth from Alizadeh in 2016. In his research, vocabulary teaching techniques, a review of common practices, and he get that vocabulary has always been an essential element of language teaching. And after a long period of relative neglect, it is now widely recognized as such. Overall, this research will be different from the studies above. The difference of those previous studies is that this research focuses on improving student vocabulary. Next is some pertinent ideas. First, teaching techniques. Teaching techniques is education strategy that can be defined as a planned method or series of activities designed to educational achieve or particular goal. Teaching techniques also is a way of making decisions about an individual class or even an entire curriculum, beginning with an analysis of key variables in the teaching situation. These variables include the characteristics of the learners, the learning objectives, and the instructional preferences of the teacher. Once these variables have been analyzed, informed decision can be made about structure, method of assessment, and other key components. Second, teaching vocabulary. Vocabulary knowledge is not something that can ever be fully mastered. It is something that expands and depends over the course of a lifetime. Teaching vocabulary is about context and repetition. I mean, what they need to know about the words they are using and using them multiple times. Next is theoretical framework. To support this study, some theories are needed. The first theory is concerned with some aspect of vocabulary teaching. Traditionally, the teaching of vocabulary above elementary level was mostly incidental, limited to presenting new items as they appear in reading or sometimes listening text. Nowadays, it is widely accepted that vocabulary teaching should be included based on the syllabus and taught in a well-planned and rigorous basis. Some authors, led by Lewis in 1997, argue that vocabulary should be at the center of language teaching, because language consists of grammatical lexis, not lexicalist grammar. Okay, this is the last chapter, chapter 3, Research Methodology. In this chapter, the writer presents type of research, design, population, sample, and sampling technique, data gathering procedure, and data analysis procedure. Okay, first, type of research. Qualitative approach is a procedure of research that results in descriptive data in writing focus that deal with human being or human speech and his behavior that is appeared. In this study, the researcher wants to know the strategies used by the teacher who is teaching vocabulary in order to improve the student vocabulary mastery at Senior High School 1 North Toraja. Okay, next is design. This research conducted by using case study. Case study research brings us to an understanding of an issue or object and can extend experience or add strength to what is already known through previous research. Case studies emphasize detailed contextual analysis of a limited numbers of events or conditions and their relationship. Okay, next, population. Ariputo said that population is the whole subject of research. As population, the writer takes the first grade exact student of Senior High School 1 North Toraja with totaling student 143, which divided into 7 classes. On the road BR Monginsidi Rantepao, South Sulawesi 91831 Indonesia. Okay, next is sample and sampling techniques. Arikanto in 2003 stated that sample is partially or representative population to be studied. To determine the sample, the researcher does class sampling, which is taken randomly. The researcher takes one class as a sample for 7 classes. The class which is chosen as a sample in the research is class 10 exact 4 with 32 students. Next is data gathering procedures. First, instrument of the study. The researcher collected the data through the classroom observation. The study employed non-participant observation, which means that the researcher was not directly involved in the situation. By Gay in 1987. For the observation, a camera and audio recorder were used to collect the data. Second, data collection techniques. In the process of the data collection, the researcher used the techniques of video and audio recording. The writer observed a class of 10 except 4 students taught by an English teacher. This class consists of 32 students. The next is data analysis procedure. After the data gathered, the researcher analyzed the data by the following steps. First, the researcher transcribes the data, which are the 4 video recordings of classroom observation. Second, the data reduction is applied to the data transcription in order to derive the teacher's teaching activities and utterance, which show techniques in teaching vocabulary that used by the teacher. Third, the result of data reduction is categorized into 11 kinds of vocabulary teaching techniques, which have been classified by Gaines and Redman in 1986, Nation 1990, and Brewster in 2003. The categorization data is done by giving tick mark in the table which is next to the utterances. 4. The result of the data categorization is classified into the 3 techniques of teaching vocabulary, which are techniques of presentation, techniques of practice, and techniques of training. 5th, the finding of the data analysis is described in the data finding and discussion. The detailed explanation is written in order to get the portrayal of the implementation of the vocabulary teaching techniques. And the last is the researcher draws the conclusion. I have presented all of my content of my seminar from chapter 1 until chapter 3. That's all of my presentation. Thank you very much for your nice attention.